What is up, you muffin munching muggles? Welcome to Fiction and Reality, where we help you, yes, you, become the most devilishly gifted human that you know you are and that you knew you always could be. So, I hear you want to build a world.
Like
But
to
bum
build
bum
the
bum.
world a home and finish it with a lawn. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves.
Honeybees, love. Doesn't that just sound disgusting and reprehensible, abominable, egregious, and boring? And I don't know about you, but I'm still waiting for Thanos to snap. So, what is world building, you ask? It's a tenacious and strenuous process that involves you, the creator, sculpting a vision and transforming that vision into a living, breathing society through the environment, the voices of your characters, culture, language, etc. In essence, you're creating a story. Now, world building, of course, is one of, if not the most important component of a story. Think of it as a blueprint, right? Of how you need to construct and sort of build a solid foundation, a framework for the rest of your story and plot. When first embarking on your journey to create your world, you'll need to have a general idea of what it is you want. So, where do you begin? Quick, what's 2 plus 2? You know what 2 plus 2 is, right? Hey, genius. If you don't have the answer, then how about you start asking some questions? What kind of world do you want to create? And more importantly, what themes do you want to explore? Before you even settle on the setting, scuttle around, do some deep digging into the philosophical polarity that you want to establish in this brave new world you're creating. We'll take, for example, V for Vendetta, which is one of my favorite pieces of fiction, which builds its foundation upon the spirit of revolution, depicting a gray, gloomy street of totalitarian UK where the government surveillance reigns supreme. The landscape is somewhat barren with dim and desolate streets, while V's lair shows a contrast with many historical pieces of art, sculptures, and paintings, right? The embodiment of the freedom of expression. Now, this is why ground zero of world building is so essential. Listen to this. If you ferret out what themes you want to portray, ask yourself what settings would be best for me to portray them. Once you have your themes, you can begin to map out a setting that you believe is holistically representative of the themes you want to portray based on your own creative ingenuity of what elements of that setting you want it to be representative of. And to try to simplify this even more, let's say that the baseline, the theme that you have in question is freedom and independence. Ask yourself, what do you believe freedom and independence is? What themes work against it? What elements of your setting do you want to represent freedom and independence through? What elements of your setting do you want to represent oppression and tyranny? This is going to be the line that will help guide the rest of your world building, and in my opinion is the most exciting part of it. You get to decide if the ground is made of candy cane or sourdough. Do spaceships screech through a nightfall sky through the ring of bullets and blasters? Example time. White kibble crust frosting from the white dogwood trees scattering the flush grounds of Pooville. They were animals, not people, yet both words sunk in tandem. And of these beings, these people, there were only two peas of the pod, those with whiskers and those without. And King Doge, that tyrant, he reigned with an iron mitt, and they say his bite was as rigid as kibble. And the name Doge was to his royal dogkin a mirror of gods, with his legion of whiskered scoundrels who bowed upon the side of his red velvety cape flapping in the wind, sniffing after the ghost of his paw prints and yelping in ecstasy. This was the state of the upper pound, of stuffed bellies sloshing to the brim with salty steaks and oceans of water, the state of the right and the state of the whiskered. But the lower pound, beyond the inner walls, downslope of the higher hill, furs scruffed with dirt crumbs and matted with fleas, were forced to choke on scraps of kibble that happened to tumble from the hill on high. And to them, the name Doge was akin to a devil who made its reapings by snatching halos from angels and wrunging them upon its horns. They wished no longer for a god, but for rebellion, and they found it chiming in the name of a soul whisker among them, who was ordered to be executed by the king, and branded by the lower-heeled folk, revolt the felled. How about that? So right here, the world is literally your canvas. So ask yourself, will your mountains talk? Will your trees be sown with melted faces of men who forged their path? Are there beings who will be able to split the sky with just the sound of their voice? Focus on showing some polarity of the themes you wish to examine through the environment you're establishing. And don't be afraid to make it obscure and out of the restricted bound of realism. Think outside of the black and white and between the ambiguous gray. Now we can move on to establishing some rules and boundaries. Now I know what you're saying. Rules schmools. Who needs those things? I don't need rules. The only rule is that I don't need rules. Well, you need them. And here's why. Why do you think people always walk on the right side of the street? Why don't you pull your pants down in public? And for finally once in your life, find the balls to punch your pleasantly plump PE teacher right in the hoo-ha? Because there are postulates that establish order. And without that order, there will only be unchecked and unbridled chaos to wreak havoc upon your life and society at large. The same concept remains true for your reader, or whoever is consuming your source material. This isn't an in-depth video about magic systems or power systems to that degree. This is just a general overview. But imagine, what would happen if your reader had no concrete framework to work from for determining how magic or the powers within your system were utilized? They'll be constantly asking themselves, what are the limits of these powers, the weaknesses?
君は五条悟だから最強なのか。最強だから五条悟。
And with regard to the framing of whatever society you choose to create, who defines the rules of the world you create? Is it those with power who instate authority, or those who are charged with it simply based off of birthright? You see, creating a list of the haves and the have-nots with regard to developing positions in the creative social hierarchy you are establishing will aid you exponentially in figuring this out. Perhaps you want to establish language, culture, and history. What makes a nation or society a civilization? The distinct languages, melting pots of culture, and an accurate account of the land's history. Now, this is a useful method in which you'll differentiate your world from others. I encourage you to leverage language. This is a chance to highlight polarity between two sects of a given population based on their social status. Maybe some people speak a certain language only when they are around their own species, or maybe their dialect shifts its axis when in the vicinity of outsiders. What is the culture of your society? Here you'll need to decide what constitutes the in-group and out-group, and furthermore, what values and beliefs are deemed moral or immoral. Maybe your story consists of a revolutionary working to pry out of the jaws of tyranny like V in V for Vendetta, and uses language as a weapon in plain sight, a code of secrecy reserved only for those worthy of hearing. Now, I know that some of you may have heard of Hammurabi's Code, which if you were only exposed to the postulates for your first time might sound like something out of a dystopian film or movie. But no. It is 100% real, and perhaps an example that will guide you in framing some rigid postulates for your own work. I'm sure you've heard of the concept of an eye for an eye. Here are just a few postulates and kind policies that Hammurabi had. If a builder built a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house in which he built falls in and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. It gets worse. If a man puts out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. Pretty simple. If a fire breaks out in a house, and someone who comes to put it out casts his eye upon the property of the owner of the house, and takes the property of the master of the house, he shall be thrown into that self-same fire. That is oddly specific. Like, is that not just oddly specific? If a son strikes his father, his hand shall be hewn off. Hewn, what does hewn mean? well, it means to chop and cut off. So that's nice. That'll keep your hands out of your dad's magazine collection. Anywho, whoa, look at that. Look at that. You must also ferret out the history of your world. What are the pivotal events of the past that set the frivolous conditions of the present, or will spin the cogs into the future? How can you best relay this history? I encourage you to think trauma, disarray, distortion. You're transitioning from some place of stability relative to that accepted statute of morality toward a place of instability, also with regard to whatever code of ethics your world has in play. Perhaps there's a war that ravaged the land, and now the slain and defeated merely live for their dreams of vengeance and nothing more. All in all, build up a good history of your story. And last but not least, give us a reason to care. We, the reader, need a reason to consume, right? With that reason being identifying with the characters that you create and being able to see the world through their eyes. Focus and spend a great deal of time chiseling out the philosophy of your characters. Help us understand their thoughts and perspectives of the world in which they live, and entice us to either root for them in a headstrong fashion or to want to go for the head. We need perspective, and if you give it to us, I promise we will either love or hate their prerogative. Not like there's any other choice though, right? Remember that this is your world, and you get to decide the rules, postulates, and define your own codes of morality, which hopefully does not include hooing off one's hand. Maybe it does. Now, what are you still doing here, gorgeous? Go forth. Go forth and write of dragons with necks long enough to sniff their own rump, of wars that rage on for eons and beyond with streaking starships that streak like dying angels, and doge kings who are of the one and only true bloodline. Now with that, I hope you found some of this helpful in some way. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And be sure to tell me the most strenuous and arduous part of world building for you, and the most fun part as well. I will leave a link to my socials in the description below. Go look at them. I am not asking you, I'm telling you. I am telling you. And with that, remember, if ever you were lost in the forestry of words, strip your mind from fantasy and look to the window of the world, and there your mind will run free.